Hello everybody, my name is CulBlu and I'm bringing out this video of me talking about a board game, and today we're going to do our full post-campaign play review of Sleeping Gods. For those who don't know, I just finished a 13-part series, each video about an hour, hour and a half long, so maybe on average, maybe 16, 17 hours to actually play through it with the ending that I ended up with. But yeah, I just finished that particular playthrough. This is post cleanup on that. For those who don't know, I live streamed it, so if you do want to watch it on Twitch, feel free to watch it on Twitch, or you can watch it on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube in the future. I do plan on doing another playthrough, because I do want to do another playthrough. I'm thinking about doing it on brutal mode, but outside of all that, this is the actual review. I'm going to try to be as spoiler-free here as possible, which seems weird because you're watching this of my post-campaign playthrough. But maybe people just want to say, hey, what does somebody feel about the campaign of the game before they actually dive into actually play the game? So I'm going to try to make this as spoiler-free as possible. And by try to, I mean I'm going to make this as spoiler-free as possible. The only spoilers you're going to see are what's on the table right now, which is tokens and card backs and like Raphael's gorgeous face, I guess. But the main thing we're trying to point out is that Sleeping Gods as a game is a campaign story-driven game. It didn't dawn upon me that it was a choose-your-own-adventure storybook in a board game form until maybe hour 6 or hour 7, to where I kind of got more of a gist of the options that you got. There are branching paths, which is very nice, and it does play in a very campaign style. This game is, in my humble opinion, this game is much more storytelling than it is game. But that's not to disparage the game part. Just to clarify, me being somebody who's played through a story-based game, with air quotes, or a game that purports to have a story-based basis, something like Escape from the Dark Sector or Final Girl, those two games can't really light a candle relative to Sleeping Gods as far as how expansive and how story-driven it is. In the case of a game like Final Girl or Escape from the Dark Sector, there's story adjacent to it, but you're also just playing the game. Whereas this one, the story is the game. And I think that's a really good thing. Like, it's not a very casual experience because there's a lot of kind of min-maxing that you can do, especially when it comes to fighting. In the combat, there's a lot of kind of backtracking that you end up doing based on, you find this quest in this location, so you gotta go to that location, do this, and now you gotta go back over here. And then sometimes the game is a little bit vague on the hints. Like, I really really wish this game would have the same summary text that it has in some of the story beats, so which I'll explain more in a second. I wish it had the same summary text on the cards. Because sometimes the quest cards, it says, hey, you talked to Timothy, and Timothy told you that there's a ship crashed on some rocks to the north. And it's like, okay, unless you remember where you saw that card, you're going to forget where to the north is. Like, is to the north the next page? Is to the north as high as you can go? Is to the north of this location? So I kind of wish that the cards would have had a little bit more text. Like, I understand that we don't want to treat people like they're not able to interpret things, but playing this game, I was not able to interpret things. So please treat me like I'm a 4-year-old and explain it to me that way, because I I struggled. So for instance, just for example, without spoiling anything, there was one particular quest, and I'm being very vague about this. There's one particular quest to where I had to go to a specific landmark on the same map, and it told me the landmark looks like this. And if you look at the map, in hindsight, I know which one it is because I found it eventually. But it said find this one location, and I looked at the map, and in my mind, three different places matched that description. So I wasn't sure, was it this one or this one or this one? And it turns out it was none of these. It was actually that one over there, because it said to the northwest, and I was looking at the northeast. So my issues with directionality aside, what I'm trying to say is that there was some times where I kind of wish the game would just spell out in very specific terms, like go to location 17 and do this thing. Like, if it said that, I'd be very happy, because like, okay, cool, I can just kind of turn my brain off a little bit on the sleuthing part. But that said, if you love deduction games, if you love kind of following a story and kind of making your own, making your own conclusions and jump into like, maybe I need to investigate here, and because I saw this here, there's a clue there, I need to go there. This game has a lot of that for you. Another thing that I didn't really notice until halfway through my first playthrough, which is why I want to do another playthrough, is that reading through some of the stories, because it is a very choose-your-own-adventure style game, you're allowed to read the options, as in, if you have options A through F, for instance, you can read all the options A, B, C, D, E, F, and read all those options and see what the failure consequence is and what story B is going to jump you to. And sometimes those things say, like, you can only use option C if you have keyword taco cat. I'm trying to use a word that's not in the game. If you have keyword taco cat, you can use option C. So you can say, like, it didn't dawn upon me that I need to write that down. So you can, like, have a notepad to the side. Like, ooh, it seems like on location number 63, if I have keyword taco cat, then I can do a thing. So you should write it down in your little notebook, which the game does technically encourage you to do. And I say technically because they give you this really cool sheet that you can use to log your gameplay and kind of save your game between plays. They also give you a giant map showing the sprawling world, and they encourage you to kind of go in and write. Like, gave you a whole pad of these, so they're clearly encourage you to write and take notes. But like I said, the detriment that I had is that, like, it wasn't until like maybe after hour 4 of my, I guess, 16-ish hour gameplay that I realized that I need to be writing down those keywords. Because, like, yes, I can go to a location that says if you have keyword taco cat, you can do this thing. And if I didn't have keyword taco cat, I could not do the thing. But that meant that should have triggered something in my mind that I need to write taco cat down. So that way I can go revisit location 63 or whatever I said earlier and use taco cat. So those kind of things are kind of RPG based things, and that's kind of coming from me as a person who has played RPGs very casually. And by that I mean I've been a part of 3 or 4 campaigns, but those campaigns were basically either one shot or one shot adjacent, as in like a weekend or maybe 2 weeks, and that was about it. So I don't really have long-term experience playing full-on tabletop RPGs. But if you do, you're gonna love this game because this is basically D&D on rails, in my opinion. And not D&D on rails as people might explain Gloomhaven sometimes, but actual D&D on rails, to where you have branching decisions. And sometimes you want to make a decision, like, for instance, if you have an encounter that happens, sometimes you might want to do part A, but you might want to do part A, but you know that your crew is not going to make it if you do part A. So you do part G instead. And you do part G, and part G is suboptimal, and you don't really get things you want, but maybe later you can come back and do part A. And it kind of gives you that kind of sense of, like, sprawling, a sense of a living, breathing world with consequences. And as much in the same way that some people enjoy story-based shows, like maybe like a Game of Thrones type situation, assuming that the last 3 seasons don't exist, or some other like sprawling world or book world like the Doom world and stuff, to where people make decisions and there are severe consequences for those decisions. And this game definitely gave me that feel. So I do appreciate the writing for that. I do appreciate the planning for that. And the whole storybook situation was really fun. You get this very thick book that you have here with all the story stuff, and I'm not going to show any text in there, but we can see that there's the first page, it's page 1, and let's see what's on the last page. Okay, the last page is blank, and it goes to page 172. So this thing has like a ton of pages, and just to give you a sense of the font sizes on these pages are, let's see, can I show any of this? Let me see. Nope, that's story. Okay, not that. Let's use the expansion book. Here's another book. This is the Tides of Ruin, I think is the name of the expansion. And in the Tides of Ruin, the storybook, the first few pages are basically instructions on how to implement this expansion into the base game. So because of that, this is the size of the text. And just to clarify, what you usually have is you have 2 sections, like, left section, right section, and these are all just full of like blocks of text. And that's what the storybook looks like. This is only 1 page. Like, this is just me showing you just 1 page about rules and stuff, new concepts, things that are not spoilers to the game. But when it comes to the story, I just want to emphasize that there's a lot of stories, a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of choices, there's a lot of consequences, there's a lot of cool stuff. I don't even want to say I didn't even scratch the surface. Like, I didn't even scratch the scratching of the surface. Like, if the surface had a surface, I didn't scratch that surface yet, because like I didn't get very deep into the game. By the time the game ended, and I played 16 hours of it, roughly 16 hours. You can watch it all on YouTube if you really want to. It's like literally right there. Or if you're watching live on Twitch, you can watch it on Twitch. When I do, or I have a playlist on Twitch as well. But what I'm trying to say is, like, there's a lot going on in this game, and that's very, 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 very fun. I think that this game benefits, unfortunately, from 2 playthroughs. What I mean by that is that it would be very nice if your first playthrough of this game could be kind of a clear, like, this is what you should expect, this is what you get type of experience. But I think this game, you really need to at least play through like a first half. And when I say first half, I mean at least 4 hours committed to 1 playthrough, and then do another playthrough. And even then, you're still going to miss a lot of things. Like I said, the fact that my first campaign playthrough that you all have watched on YouTube, if you watch all the videos, or that you all watch on Twitch if you're watching me doing a live stream, the fact that the first campaign playthrough wasn't my first time playing through it, as in I had played a sample campaign. I played like the first maybe like for 3 hours or so, off camera, just so I can make sure I understand the rules and see what's going on. Played the tutorial. The tutorial was great. I love the tutorial. It's not conclusive enough. It doesn't tell you everything you need to know, which is unfortunate because I'm a person who forgets rules sometimes. But I also like to be a stickler for rules. But that goes a long way to say that the tutorial was great. I played 3 hours of the tutorial. Played the tutorial, played past the tutorial by 3 hours, and then went and did the live stream of the full playthrough. And even then, I was still kind of missing some concepts and missing some rules. Like the fact that you needed to pay, the fact that you need to flip a fate card, for instance, to actually move was something that I missed from the tutorial. And that means that the first 3 hours I was playing, I was not flipping cards. I was just kind of, I was just kind of moving around. I wasn't like committing anybody to do the actual skill check. I was just kind of moving like, okay, I'm gonna move 3, I'm gonna move 1, I'm gonna move 2. And, in hindsight, it sounds weird when I say it out loud because now I know what the rules are. It's like, how was I doing that? But it wasn't recorded. Just pretend it didn't happen. That's just me kind of saying that this game does benefit a lot from having 2 playthroughs. There's some things that you will know in your second playthrough that you wouldn't technically have known if you play for the very first time. So unfortunately, you cannot unring those bells. But in those cases for solutions, you can just choose a direction. Like my first playthrough, I went essentially north and east. So because I went northeast on my first playthrough, my second playthrough, I'm probably going to go south and west, and then try to explore the world and see if I can get another 16 hours of gameplay out of it. Because if I can, that'd be great. That'd be fantastic. And I probably will. And then maybe later on, I'll try to see if I can start making an efficient path and connecting quests and like knowing that this quest starts here. I can figure out where the end is because I might have more time. There's a lot to explore. And I do appreciate that a lot about the game. So my my lasting impression, I should say, is that this game is fantastic. I would recommend it. I do think it has a lot of shortcomings. One of the biggest complaints that some people have brought up about this game is that the traveling mechanisms are very, 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 like they bog down the game. And I understand, I empathize, and I agree. The caveat that I'll say to that is that now that I've gone through my second playthrough and I've done a specific thing that made the traveling mechanic less hard, the very first thing I'm going to do in my next playthrough is I'm going to do that one thing that I did in this playthrough that made traveling easier. I'm going to do that thing as soon as I can. Like the moment that the game starts, my first goal is to do that one thing that makes traveling easier. And then once I do that one thing that makes traveling easier, then I'm going to just explore the rest of the game, let the game unveil before me. So that's kind of some information I'll take going into my next game. But the primary thing I want to say about all this, though, is that this game was fun, enjoyable. I loved it. The storytelling experience was great. I can definitely see myself playing this in the future with my niece and nephew. I can see me playing this with my parents, and see me playing this with my board game friends that I have normally. Maybe get a campaign or 2 going. I'm actually trying to convince one of my friends to buy this game himself, so that way I'll be able to have one campaign running with myself, and then play a game with him, and then maybe get somebody else to buy the game. Like this game is really fun. Like I enjoyed a lot of it. The combat. Some people have argued that the combat is very clunky, and I will concede that the combat is very clunky and sometimes swingy, and sometimes more swingy, and it slows down the game. I will also concede the point that the managing your ship, like managing your crew's health and managing their fatigue, is very tedious. There is a sort of art to that tedium, which means that you kind of have to figure out what is the flow of how to manage the health, manage the fatigue, and then manage assigning people to certain things. Sometimes you got to take those hits. Sometimes you got to let things just let damage happen. Sometimes you got to let negative effects happen. But even then, it still doesn't, in my mind, doesn't kind of excuse the limitations of it. It's kind of like one of those things, like it's a mechanic that exists in the game. It being the managing your crew situation. It's a mechanic that exists in the game that it's a little bit less kind of, hey, here's a cool mechanic, let's interact with it. It's more like no, this is a mechanic, you will interact with me. And I think that kind of bearing down, you will interact with me part is what turns off a lot of people. For me, before the first shuffle, because I made it through, sorry, I don't want to spoil my playthrough, but before my first shuffle, it was very difficult, it was very tedious, it was very slow. And it was mainly because I didn't really have many resources to kind of manage that outside of going to port and then healing people. So as a result of that, it was very slow, methodical, and annoying. But once I got a few items on my belt, once I got a few things to kind of help manage that, I was able to make it a lot more efficient, make it a lot more useful. and it became a lot less of a daunting task to manage. Yes, it became more expensive, but I had ways to achieve that, get those resources necessary to actually do the thing, and also ways to achieve the goal of managing my crew without wasting too much time. So that became much more pleasant towards the end. I'm a little sad that the game ended when it did, but hey, it did. And we'll see how I build it next time around. So that's kind of it for the whole spoiler-free review. If you wanted a full spoiler-free review, I did do a review in the middle of the playthrough, but I decided not to post it because I didn't like how it turned out. So maybe I'll do like another full review of the entire game, but post-campaign review, this is my post-campaign review, spoiler-free. So thank you all very much for watching. Hopefully this is informative and useful for you all. If you want to see a spoiler full review, post-campaign review, then feel free to check out the next video, or maybe not. Maybe if you don't want to see it. So that's it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. And as always, I will see y'all whenever.